But it's a 1987 sitting out here. That was all the cash I had.
Michael, you're gonna be so rich with kids.
Hope he has a better connection this go around.
You started, oh, you haven't started recording yet?
They haven't started, have they?
No.
Okay.
We can always cut off the recording.
Kids moms having their homecoming and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, tonight?
Parade with, I think the parade may be finishing up.
It is 6 o'clock, so.
Going on now. So with the boys will be there, they'll play football.
I think they need to change their name.
I'll be a powder puff. Hey Tyler, how are you? Good, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Okay, well, it's 1 minute after.
If you wouldn't mind speaking to the mic so we can hear you. Oh, I thought you were.
Oh, Di, turn the recording on.
We're live on YouTube, so
Okay, all right. I'll speak into the mic. Joe Chambers will not be here tonight. Okay, my name is Kathleen Alder. I am the chair of the Planning Commission for Providence City. I'd like to open the meeting and call it to order. We have Brian Marble and Robert Perry, Michael Fortune, and Tyler Ricks, who's our new member. This is your second maiden flight. Oh, your third. No. Wow.
But he's voting tonight, isn't he? Is he voting tonight?
Yes, you would vote
Put that down.
tonight. So let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Tyler will do that for us. So please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation,
to the republic.
For which it stands,
under God,
And liberty
and justice for all.
I'm nervous.
We might have to start over again. Did we say it all? Let's do it again.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe we're part of that because when did they start not saying the pledge in school?
I don't remember.
We didn't.
You didn't say it? See what happened? Thank you.
I apologize if I.
I'll give you another turn. Practice on. Okay, we do not have any minutes to approve, but I understand they're done and we should have them next week or next.
She was working hard on them.
They're not easy to do.
Not when you go to that long.
What's the best?
We do have some minutes, though.
Yes, we have minutes, but they're not, we don't have them done.
Presented.
They're preliminary.
They're preliminary. And so
Tyler,
they're
would you
not
ask?
on our agenda tonight because we couldn't get
I
them
was.
in time to put them on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So that's why they're not on.
But I did get a message saying that there was 2 messages to add to the agenda. Right, for tonight? Yeah,
True.
I didn't see that, but
There was the,
Was the minutes in the
minutes in the ballot
result
spring.
staff report, but the minutes are just for reference. They're not for approval.
Oh, okay,
preliminary.
okay.
I was going to note on those draft minutes that were sent out, I was listed as a voter on every item, and that would just need to be adjusted because I was not voting.
okay,
So we'll look at that when we have them for our next meeting.
Okay.
Tyler's redeemed himself.
Okay. Public comment. Citizens may express their views on issues within the Planning Commission jurisdiction. The commission accepts comments in person, by mail, and by email, and by text. By law, email comments are considered public record and will be shared with all parties involved, including the commission, Planning Commission, and the applicant. So do we have any public comments? if you're to comment for something in specific that we've got on the agenda, then that's when you would do that, but this is for general public comment.
We do not have any via email or text for tonight's meeting.
Great, thank you. You should sit in Ty's place so you don't have to keep getting up every time.
Oh, yeah, get up over there anyway.
Oh. Okay, I will close the public comments since we don't have any. Ryan, and there's no one on Zoom that wants to say. We have two public hearing items tonight. We have an appeal authority code amendment. The planning commission to take comment and questions regarding the request to amend Providence City Code, Chapter 2 through 5, Appeal Authority. And you remember, this is the one that we're suggesting that we have one individual as opposed to a commission that will hear appeals on land issues. So,
And variances.
and variances.
We're the only ones voting on that. We've got full control of that, or is
This
that?
is a public hearing, so we'll have that when we get to a legislative action. But right now, we're just taking public comments. So, Ryan, do you see anything? Scarlett?
No public comment.
Scarlett, my granddaughter. Okay, do we need to keep it open for a little bit, or we can just, there's no one here to say anything, so, okay, I will close. Do I need a vote to do that, or I just?
No.
Okay,
It's a chair action.
I will close the item number 1, the appeal authority code amendment. And now I will open item number 2. It's PCC 10-5 sensitive area code amendment. We'll take comments and questions regarding the request to amend the Providence City Code, Chapter 10 through 5, 10-5, sensitive areas. And remember, this is the one where we're talking about sensitive areas don't need to come to Planning Commission because they are always dealt with by staff in their approval process through the staff.
It would just be codifying the conditions that are already being done, so.
Okay, any public comment on that? Scarlett, do you got anything?
No.
Okay, either email or text. Ryan doesn't have anything. Anyone in here? Okay, I will go ahead and close item number 2. Not having any public comment on that. We'll move to the legislative action. Item number 3, claiming PCC 2-5 Appeal Authority Code Amendment. We will consider and may recommend to the City Council PCC 2-5 amendment, changing from a 3-member with 2 alternate members appeal board to an administrative appeal hearing officer. So, any comments?
I had one question. I was going to ask Ryan just to help me understand as I went through it all and looked at it. Basically, what we're saying is that we'll have the one appeals hearing officer and maybe one variance officer appointed by the mayor for that. My question was, is there an appeal process if a decision rendered by either one of those 2 individuals? Is there some place for them to go after?
District court,
Okay, so there is some way.
yes.
And yeah, I looked at all of that, and if you look at the history of it, we've tried different ways to find the perfect solution or the best working. And I think this sounds like a good idea, and see how that works instead of trying to get so many people together for it. I think the scheduling was a problem before, so. Having the appeals thing was the only thing I had a question about, and I think citizens having that ability to do it if they had to or felt a need to takes care of pretty much everything, so.
And I told you I had a friend who was put off for 3 months
Trying to get
because
this
they
scheduled.
couldn't get everybody together, and so it cost her 3 months on her house plus another $10,000 in price. So that was not a good thing. Okay, any other comments? Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve to recommend,
That we recommend.
that we recommend to the city council PCC 2-5 Appeal Authority Code Amendment, changing from a 3-member with 2 alternative members appeal board to an administrative appeal hearing officer and variance officer. We specify that in there. It says we're going to do 2. So
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Michael Fortune and a second by Tyler Riggs. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 4, PCC 10-5 Sensitive Areas Code Amendment. Planning Commission to consider and may recommend to the City Council PCC 10-5 amendment, changing from a conditional use to reviews through the subdivision development process, the building permit process, and the engineering reviews. So, discussion.
I thought it all looked good and incorporated all the things that we had discussed before. That looked to all be in there and clarify things and requirements for developers that were needed. I think it also, yeah. So I think it contains everything we had discussed in the previous meetings about it.
The red lettering is going to be added, correct?
Correct. Okay, so not having any further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we consider to recommend to the city council PCC 10-5 amendment, changing from a conditional use to reviews through the subdivision development process, the building permit process, and engineering reviews.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Robert Perry, seconded by Brian Marble. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving right along. I thought maybe we'd be here all night, but.
Oh, Jesus.
We were planning for 2 hours so that we can get minutes for the next meeting.
Well, I do all in my power that I can to move this quickly. Okay, item number 5, design standards for attached and multifamily residential development. You know, did we do that motion right? Did we move to approve or to recommend approval?
Move to recommend.
Did we do recommend?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. My brain just didn't hear that. Okay, design standards for attached and multifamily residential development. The Providence City Planning Commission will consider and may recommend to the Providence City Council the proposed amendments to the City Code Title 10, Chapter 8, Section 9, design standards for attached and multifamily residential development. This was brought before the City Council on 7/21 and sent back to the Planning Commission. with recommendations, and it was tabled the last planning commission meeting for further discussions. So, open for discussion. There were quite a few things on there to,
We've got them, we've got
they're in
highlights
blue.
All right.
They are in blue.
The new ones.
The new ones, the ones that we haven't discussed.
On page 5, on the, if a garage entrance abuts a street, road, or sidewalk, a driveway is required, etc.
Right.
Would it be better to just be more clear if we said if it abuts a public street, road, or sidewalk, so that there's no misunderstanding that if they have a private road or a sidewalk as part of the development?
Is it required on a private road?
The request that came out of the city council was on the interior roads. They were concerned about being able to walk through the interior of the development without vehicles hanging over the sidewalks. So if you say public roads, generally, there aren't many interior public roads within a lot of the multifamily developments. So
This doesn't apply to a PUD.
no, it does apply to a PUD, but they're generally private roads.
Right.
So if you said public road, then it wouldn't apply to anything within the development if they were all private roads.
Right.
So, but you can certainly make that, if the commission feels like you don't want it to apply to private roads, you can certainly make that recommendation. But they were talking about roads within the development when they made that request.
I'd like to see us consider being sensitive to the alley use case that we described previously, just having.
This excludes the alley.
Okay, so that's, as long as everyone.
Yeah,
feels
the
that's
alley
clear in
is
there.
not, it's not named in this.
Well,
Well, it says there's no driveway requirement if the garage entered abuts an alley.
Right.
Okay. That's,
Okay, so we're gonna get into the difference between a street and an alley. A private street and an alley.
there's a definition on them.
And Scarlett personally went out and measured
There you
a
go.
suburban, and it is 18 feet. So we went with 18 feet. Scarlett, you want to point out anything else that might be there? We did do the changes on the amenities, but just only added a couple of things to that.
I thought that was real good. I think that,
We also made the change that said above average grade on the exterior products.
I really like that wording. Where is that? I'm not seeing it.
Or something.
that's page 4, the bottom of page 4.
Yes,
Okay.
where it says exterior materials, all exterior materials shall be above average grade quality. And then actually the next sentence, I just kind of changed that around a bit so it would read a little easier. Suitable for the climate and exposure in which the development is located and maintenance free to the greatest degree possible. So
So it leaves them some wiggle room in there.
well, yeah, it's got rid of some of the extra wording.
Yeah.
It says the same thing without all the extra words.
Anytime we can cut down on wording, good.
And then we talked about the streets and the alleyways and then the amenities, we talked about that. And if you're okay the way that we added and utilized and then used the example of the swimming pool. And then that was all the changes in the last 3 meetings have been incorporated into this now.
Third time's the charm, right?
We hope. But I'm certainly willing to keep at it if you've got other comments.
Okay, so Hearing anything, I will entertain a motion. Thank you, Scott.
I think we've gotten everything into it that we had talked about. Those last changes, I think, will make a big difference to help clarify. So I will make a motion that we recommend to the city council the proposed amendments to the city code title 10, chapter 8, section 9, design standards for attached and multifamily residential development, along with its findings of facts, conclusion of law, and conditions set forth by the staff.
Okay, I have a motion by Michael Fortune,
I'll second that.
second by Brian Marble. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We have item number 6, PCC 11-1-3 exception. Planning Commission will consider and may make a recommendation to the City Council, a request by Paul Gibbons representing Shoreline Estates 2021 LLC for an exception to the Providence City Code 11-1-3, which limits a cul-de-sac to a maximum length of 600 feet. The applicant is requesting an 819-foot cul-de-sac in the Shoreline Estate Plans 2 and phases 2 and 3 development. So Scarlett, if you would give us an update, and we've got somebody here from Shoreline. If you wouldn't mind signing your name so that they know that how to spell your name. Or, yeah, go ahead. Scarlett can talk loud in case you don't know.
So the staff report that was attached to the agenda, we look at state code, which allows the city to create ordinances that require a subdivision comply with our ordinances. And we also look at the general plan, and we looked at our city code and the definition of a cul-de-sac. And you can see there, it says in the definition, it says that shall not exceed 600 feet in length. I also included a copy of the standard and specification construction drawing C2A, which is the cul-de-sac. And you can see there that it, again, it says that there's a 600-foot maximum. And then Providence City Code 1127D explains the process of granting an exception and before the city council. So once again, you're doing a recommending action on this. That when approving a request, let's see, does it tell me that the planning commission and the staff have to make a recommendation. So in number 6, it talks about the applicant or board or officer of the municipality or any person adversely affected by a decision to approve or deny an exception. Oh no, that's the appeal of the exception. Right in the top is where it says that city council may grant an exception to the requirements of this title after receiving the recommendations of the planning commission. And this, when we went through and put our code online, some of our changes did not, some of the recent changes before the code went online didn't get through. We did have what we called development review committee at one time. It was since changed to the executive staff, but that's what that's referring to. Provided that such exception will not substantially impair the intent of this title. So before the planning committee or the city council can consider it, they need a recommendation from you as well as staff. What we concluded is that we've enacted the ordinances. We followed our general plan. You can see a snippet out of our out of the parcel zoning viewer that shows the planned connection between Gibbons Parkway and Sarah Street. And I just happened to have a meeting with Russ Holly while just as I was putting all of this together. He's the senior planner with Logan City, and he confirmed that Gibbons Parkway is still the road Logan plans to extend. That doesn't mean if another possibility came up, they wouldn't consider that, but they are still planning that Gibbons will definitely extend. Our trails master plan does talk about trails to the east of this area, and the transportation plan depicts Sarah Street as the street that's going to extend to the north. And then you can see in the two illustrations, the applicant actually did have a turnaround with the intent of extending this road to the north. Through discussions with that property owner, that wasn't, they can address that a little bit more, but it's my understanding that that turnaround isn't going to come to be. And so that leaves them with the cul-de-sac. And our code does require access to unsubdivided property adjoining areas insofar as continuation or access shall be deemed necessary by the city. However, as stated, the above plan is for Gibbons Parkway and Sarah Street. The conditions that we have in this is that the applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, and Providence City rules, laws, codes, ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. So again, you're making a recommendation. Even if you recommend that they go with the cul-de-sac, the final decision will be up to the city council. Also included in your report, or in your packet, was the letter submitted by the application or the applicant that explains their reasoning behind the request for the extended cul-de-sac length. And if you have questions, I would entertain them, but we do have Paul Gibbons and Steve Earle are both here that they could speak to the matter as the applicant if you'd like. Yes, I'd like to hear from them.
I had one quick question for you, Scarlett, or Ryan. Have we heard from the fire marshal about if we did the cul-de-sac, that everything is all right?
Yes, of course, we always like through streets for snowplows and fire marshals and all kinds of things like that, but they can make the cul-de-sac work, yes.
Scarlett? So we're adding a little over 200 feet past the 600. What popped in my mind was as the DPW plows the snow, they're going to be picking up a little bit of snow and they're going to be pushing some aside. Will that cul-de-sac gather more snow because of the length?
Yes, it would.
So at some point that has to be addressed.
Yep, at some point they'll have to go in there and maybe haul some of it out depending on the weather or the winter. We can only hope.
Yeah.
That will be the case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. State your name.
All Gibbons.
Gibbons with these.
Yeah, double B. I can address from my perspective as a developer some of the things just on an overall level as to why we're asking for this. We've dealt at length with the Watterson family to the north and concluded that it's in our best interest to move forward without relying on them we just put ourselves at their mercy on a couple of things. If we don't do the subdivision, as Scarlett stated, originally we had a turnaround up there, and they've they've come back and they've denied that. We also plan on moving a lot of dirt around on the piece, and rather than move that dirt to the north onto the waters of the piece, we just felt like we could create a much better cul-de-sac if we did it on the property that we have. So the final point is we just feel like that. Look, we acknowledge that it's harder to I live on the cul-de-sac, so I understand the issues with snow and everything else. But so I acknowledge that, but it also looks a ton better. The Watterson family has done a conservation easement their land, so I don't know how the city plans. I don't know how Logan City plans to deal with that, but they will have to deal with that at some point. So they may or may not get a through street there. Suspicion is they've got a pretty tall hurdle to now to get a through street. They may get it done, but I do want there's a conservation easement there.
Just because of the attitude of the Watterson and not wanting to develop that.
So they put their land in conservation. And so, like I say, I'm not going to get into the specifics of that. They're going to have to deal with the Watterson family there, but they have gone ahead and done that. Final point is we just think it looks a lot better. It's a beautiful subdivision. It'll be a wonderful addition to Providence City. Attract great people to the city. They'll be very excited about the subdivision itself. So
How many homes in the subdivision?
Steve, 47 bases on the street.
We're only about 20 on this, 14 to 20 on this street. With the cul-de-sac, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So we're going to do it in 2 phases. Scarlett, I don't see, you don't have the preliminary plat as a concept.
It's here.
It's
Is there? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Where they show those. So the issue of snow, if we were to get a great deal and it becomes an issue of having to clear that out, how will that be addressed? Is it through an HOA or?
We don't have plans for an HOA right now. We can certainly talk about that. But right now we don't have a plan for an HOA.
Because what would have happened before, if I understand correctly, it would have been pushed up past this turnabout, just putting it on that other property there. So you're going
So
to
there's
lose
a
that
fire turnaround plus a
Yeah.
place to.
push snow. So now they're going to lose that because of the lots there.
Did you pick up more lots by doing this? Or did you lose lots by doing that?
So,
Same number.
and again, Watterson's are unwilling to allow that to happen on the property.
Too
So
bad, wherever we can do connectivity, we'd like to do that.
yeah, what would happen is we'd actually end up losing lots because we'd have to make some sort of an adjustment to our subdivision.
You would you would lose lots if you put in the extension.
If we put in the dead end instead of a subdivision, we have to probably lose at least one lot there.
For the hammerhead that you'd have to have, it would be temporary until the road connected, and then you'd gain the lot back. Somebody would, somewhere. Okay, I just curious.
Yeah, we're trying to control our own destiny and then what the water's.
So the hammerhead that was on the adjoining property, they're not allowing that.
That's correct.
That's why you'd have to come back and
We'd have to lose at
Yeah.
least one lot
Yeah.
to do a hammerhead.
Yeah. And Steve is the engineer. He could correct me on that. But that's what I'm.
Yeah, one lot.
Yeah.
for a road that would probably never go, may not be connected to something.
Isn't Sarah Street down lower?
Yeah.
So that's the other point is if you look you look at the connection between Gibbons Parkway and Sarah Street, I don't think it's anticipating this particular cul-de-sac.
There's one picture that you have, Ryan, that shows where this is and where the Sarah Street is. So,
Yeah, right here.
yeah, that, yeah,
So I think we're talking about this particular cul-de-sac here.
right.
We're talking about something down in this area.
Yeah, that's where they plan to make the connection if they were able to make that.
Do I have the facts right?
You did.
So the large circle would still have a connection. You're just not gonna be connecting at the small circle, is that
Large circle.
this one
Yes.
here? Big oval.
Yes, that's where somewhere within that large circle. It won't necessarily be a straight line, but somewhere as development happens, that would connect with Gibbons Parkway.
That's not.
No, that's not. That's just the planned area for that connection.
Forgive me if this is a dumb question, but with those two lots at the end of the cul-de-sac, in the cul-de-sac illustration, is there any possibility of shading off a little bit of one, a little bit of one, a little bit of the other, and creating a slot with those snowplow that's not owned by, it's a, kind of common area. I know you haven't considered an HOA, but somewhere that would be just green space otherwise, but a snowplow can push through.
Are you talking about kind of like you did on the others, what Charlie did on the other side of the road, fire accidents?
I'm not familiar with that, but
I think there's always possibilities, right?
I grew, the street that I grew up on, in Logan, was 1,000-foot long cul-de-sac. Canterbury Drive on Cliffside.
Sure.
And the snow plows there was always a vacant lot the snowplow could push snow into. So it never became an issue. And as long as you have a vacant lot, it's not an issue. But in the future, there's a lot of snow I think that's the biggest problem that's been brought up here is where does it go when there's not a lot to push it into? So if there was a way to just carve out a little bit there to have an area that's defined for that, then it may.
We want to make sure that we keep it viewable, right? But I'm certainly not opposed to something like that. You'd have to, Steve's the engineer, I don't know. Maybe look at that.
And they make those lots too small.
I couldn't tell from the
I think what
illustration.
let me make sure I understand. You're talking about like an alleyway or something right here.
Yep, just something that would be enough to push
Pile of snow, yeah.
pile snow into.
So maybe even any of those lot lines.
Probably looking at the end, though, that's the way.
That's how the
Snow
snow
works,
would
it
go.
crack and then it pushes toward the end.
Come up so that we can state your name.
Steve Earl. Just as a practical matter, I mean, typically when they plow a street, they plow snow to the sides of the road. I mean, that's how it happens everywhere. Cul-de-sacs, I don't see how the length of the cul-de-sac makes that different one way or another. Every cul-de-sac, the snowplow drivers, I mean, I know some drivers love them, some drivers hate them. I've always understood that's a lot of the times driving factor between whether cities will allow cul-de-sacs or not. We could definitely find a place to put snow, but it's just a matter of if the driver wants to go to that trouble to actually put the snow in a particular place or not, I think. But yeah, a lot of times it's just a matter of getting that snowplow driver trained on how to actually plow a cul-de-sac.
I'm not a snowplow driver, but listening to the way they talk and the way the snow gets piled up towards the end, that generally they just make their continuous plow around. So where you'd probably be looking at I got too old of eyes, Ryan. What lot is that? Can you even see?
No.
I'll walk over. Yes, the one that Ryan's got the arrow on. That would probably be the more convenient place actually for plow as they come
Or
around
deposit
that,
from the snow.
to deposit some of the snow that's not accumulated in the center.
We need to consider a larger cul-de-sac, center space for snow.
If you have a large, well, it's already a pretty large cul-de-sac for fire code. It's like 96. And bear in mind, we've got fairly large park strips planned on this street too. I believe they're like 10.5-foot wide park strips, which leave you quite a bit of snow to pile snow.
You are higher up the hill and you're dealing with 16 lots, that's what's going to get pushed up that way. I agree. The other two cul-de-sacs that are there on that, you're servicing 8 lots or 9 lots, something like that. And Ryan, has that been an issue, a problem
With plowing snow,
with the snow?
well, this last year wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't want to
But
do something that creates a problem for us and then we got to solve that problem.
I think from a public works side, we always like through streets because then you plow at a consistent speed or that way. A cul-de-sac stops you or you slow down or whatever. But I would ask that the commission consider that you're not planning for this one, but you're planning as a general rule, you should be looking out for what the next phase is, what the next 50 years might look like. The city is older than any one of us, even though some may talk how old they may be, but the city has outlived everyone in the room, and we've got to plan accordingly for its lifetime, not for ours. So however that works and however you make your decisions, just keep in mind that you do this. If you make the exception, or if you consider the exception, keep in mind that once a house goes there, the difficulty of building a road there will be extremely tough one day if that happens. And it may never happen. And I don't know how the next one's going to go. But the job of planning is to look forward into the future enough that you can see what that possibility might be. And if there's enough access and that from other ways, you consider that. But I would just keep in mind that is there a way? Is there the right spot? The one down below connects in. It was required, and it may be a dead end forever. But anyway, I just keep in mind that you're looking out for that planning for a long term and not just for this project.
We get different snow conditions. We get a powdery snow, that's going to be easy to push off to the side. If the winters are warmer and the snow is wet and heavy, it may not be easier to push off to the side. It may be just stuck in the front of the plow. I don't know. I don't plow snow, but I would like to be assured that if we're adding 200 feet to that cul-de-sac, we have room for the snow at the end. If that's what we want.
And I guess a counterpoint to that too would be if our alternative is like the 900 or 1,000 foot dead end road, which is even more length. The nice thing about cul-de-sac is you can actually control what's going to be built in the final situation, as opposed to if you end up with a 1,000 foot long permanent dead end road because Logan City never connects to it or water system never developed, or they build a large house at the end of it that prevents that road from going through or something. You do have the control to have a very nice permanent situation with the cul-de-sac that's planned, has the big radius turnaround that everybody can turn around easily on without having to worry about a hammerhead. And then if you have the hammerhead situation, obviously that has to be plowed somehow too. So
Is there space for connectivity down lower of Sarah Street? I mean, is there a spot for Sarah Street to connect?
Yes, Sarah Street is the planned connection with Gibbons Parkway. And I don't know why Logan City didn't look further east, but that they do not have definite plans for further east. One suggestion I might make is that We could have, if you'd like, we could have our public works director and our street superintendent include a memo to the city council as to if they have, because the city council can establish a condition along with the exception. We could have them send a memo to the city council on the snow removal. Because honestly, Steve does bring up a good point with the wide park strips. Part of the nice thing about those wide park strips is that when people do their sidewalks, they don't put it back out in the street. Their side stays in that side of the park strip and our side stays in our side of the park strip, and the park strips are wide enough to accommodate both sides usually. So that does help some, but we could, like I said, I'm not a snowplow driver. We could certainly have them put a statement in that would go to the
So we
city
could do a
council.
conditional approval.
Mhm.
and
Or
send that on
you
to
could
the
make a recommendation.
council.
A recommendation.
Additional recommendation to
Yep.
them based on additional information that we don't have right now.
Yes, you could do that.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, we've got a cul-de-sac that can handle the snow the way that it is. Anybody disagree on that? I
With
think we
the
do.
10-foot,
Park strip and
10-foot strips, those are
But the,
huge.
but the park strip
They're
is,
really big,
park strip we're talking about is up and down the street before you get to the cul-de-sac.
correct.
So there's plenty of on the street. It's, the question is, where do you put the snow in the cul-de-sac?
Well,
And this
they've
is,
got 10-foot park strips
Sure,
too, right?
Even in the bulb of the cul-de-sac, there are 10-foot park strips.
Right.
so
Why did
we're
you
not
decide
gonna
to do
have,
that?
not gonna be a problem. Unless it's an odd cul-de-sac. That is, the cul-de-sac's extra small or whatever, and it's not. So we've got a standard cul-de-sac that the city likes. Is that
Just a little
correct?
longer. It's all-
Okay, it's longer, but
The bulb, the round part, that is the city standard. That's meeting the required standard.
right, and that's where the snow problem is the bulb.
Right.
It's not the street. Okay,
Well, it's the collection of snow as they get to the bulb, because there's always a collection there.
and so following the standards that the city's got in place already is going to make this just fine. I mean, I don't see a reason I don't think snow removal's got anything to do with the street. Right? It could be 100 feet long. We still have the same issue. I mean, those snow plows are sideways, right? So they're pushing snow off the road. They're not pushing snow down the road.
Right.
Okay. So the real question then is, do we want to force the Hammerhead in the future connection or not? Is that the other part of this question? Is that what we're dealing with here?
Well, Sarah Street would have to come up significantly to meet that if we were, right?
Sarah Street wouldn't change. It would be, there would be and Gibbons probably wouldn't change. There would be a different street that is yet to be developed up on the east side of Logan that would probably connect with this.
Looking at the GIS map here, and Sarah Street and Gibbons Street are pretty parallel, or they're pretty aligned. I look at the development that Logan has that would be aligned with this street to the east, and you have houses pretty much straight. Like you would have to tear through a house or a property that ends in a cul-de-sac or a street that ends in a cul-de-sac to make a connection. Now, I can't say what would ever happen there, but I could not imagine the way that that higher east is set up right now on the Logan side, that a road would ever extend through there, just looking at this map. But that conversation, I can't talk today. Conservation easement notwithstanding.
You could buy out of that.
Yeah, that would be the only issue there. But that makes a lot of sense for Sarah Street and Gibbons Parkway to eventually connect, just the way that they're set up, as long as there's no other land issues.
Well, I would say, and I don't know the conservation easement this size, but you're talking about you're talking about this acreage. And if they took their development which is approximately, let's see if it has the acreage on here. It doesn't even say acreage. That's weird. How many acres is your development? 32. So there is enough acreage to mirror that on the north side of them before you hit to current roads. So you could take their entire development, take this entire development and mirror it to the north and have what connectivity? I mean, it may not be the right spot. I don't propose that. I just, at that point, if as Ryan said, that connectivity is the issue rather than snow, then if you're talking connectivity and acreage, I would say, is that acreage, you know, if you take that development and flip it, mirror it, and it will connect to Sarah, we would expect it would connect to Sarah Street. But the question would come is, do you think it should connect at this spot? And if not, then the exception, you know, probably gets that way. If it has other connections, but there's not a north connection, because so those aren't going to be the connection. It will have to come to Sarah for all of the property that's up here, if that's what we're looking for. I would point as this body, I would take your attention down south. We have a development here that, because they have a single point of entrance, this area has been sitting undeveloped for, we talked about development for how long?
15.
For 15 years, but they can't, because they have a single bottleneck in, and the bottleneck from the fire department is saying, because of the high fire danger on the bench, that single access is too narrow in order to allow additional growth to occur there. So not that I have a recommendation, only just adding to your considerations as you look at what are the other possibilities are. And I get that you know, Paul looks and says, well, it'll look like they'll develop. And I don't think it was Paul, maybe it was Steve that said maybe ever. But again, whoever owns it today will die, and the city will continue on. I don't mean to be crass about it.
Citizens too.
So anyway, that's the size. So I just kind of highlighting that.
Is there only a single point of entry into your development?
Not to there. Well, they have multiple, because for Spring Creek Parkway. So there's multiple in theirs.
I think what you're pointing to is a Logan City issue, right?
It's whether you connect to the next one to the north, and we allow that. But I mean, we require.
On the Providence City side, we've got multiple points of entry.
Yeah, I don't. Right. Yeah. Right. Mine's not a connection into Providence. It's the next development in the north. Does that have a matter? And do we care? We hope that our adjacent cities at least think about it, at least give consideration when they're doing that. Anyway, it's just good for that. So, but yeah, mine wasn't on your connection. It's true.
Considering the length of the cul-de-sac
That's a consideration.
in that connectivity.
Well, the connectivity is not the issue that we're considering, other than we're saying we want to consider that connectivity issue along with this, and we have our responsibility to think about the safety of, and I always like connectivity where we can get it.
The other real thing I think is you're right now, because you're not going to get the Hammerhead turnaround on the property to the north. what you're really asking is are we gonna allow them to extend above past the 600-foot limit? Or do we require them to lose a lot in the effort to put in a hammerhead turnaround? I think that's really where we are. And if you do that, if you lose the lot to the hammerhead, there's connectivity in the future. But so I don't know. Did the initial plans and everything propose this, Ryan? That the road went all the way up to connect?
So the exception is to allow something different than a cul-de-sac, because it wouldn't, the cul-de-sac would be too, it wouldn't facilitate that. So you can get the stretch. If you deny the extra on cul-de-sac, the cul-de-sac comes back. At that point, you'll lose it. So the other option is to put a straight road. I don't know how you lose a lot with a straight road.
They would be required to have the hammerhead, right?
But that's a temporary thing. It's a temporary reserve.
With all
Yeah,
due respect,
sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's temporary to the city.
Yeah.
So I may be dead, though, when that hammerhead comes out. I just want to point that out.
I don't disagree. I give you the point. You might be. I hope you're not.
I suspect I will be. So
I don't know that.
I don't. Probably for all intents and purposes. So,
Unless somebody buys that property and starts to develop it,
sure.
you never know. But
Yeah.
but looking at things right now, but that's always the hard thing. That's always a hard thing. We don't know that aspect, but they ask us to plan for those things.
I really like the idea of offering through traffic. The possibility of through traffic. We had one last week. There was no possibility. We were trying to line up one access with another. And we were talking about 30 feet and one lot, I think, there as well. But one was a PUD, one was development, and both of those were small streets that really weren't intended to go through. I would hope that we would ask for a recommend to the city council that we have a through street go through there.
Is that a motion?
Are we ready for one? I can do it.
We have a motion and second. We still have time to discuss.
Yeah, please. So you do have a preliminary plat that's already been approved with the 3 cul-de-sacs. I don't know if that changed your calculus, but anyway, I just want you to be aware of that.
Scarlett, you have comment?
I don't think it's actually been approved. It's in the study, but I didn't think we'd approved it until we
I don't think it's
had the
been
water.
approved. I think it's been submitted and applied and being reviewed.
We're talking about the preliminary plat that was approved last year.
Oh,
The reason this
Not-
one's back in
okay.
and not back up
Because of
for discussion
modified.
is because they acquired an extra 100 feet, 100-foot wide strip along the north edge of the subdivision, which then extended the length of the cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
But the preliminary plat that was approved last year did have 3 cul-de-sacs in it.
that preliminary plat. The preliminary plat that was approved along with, so that they could build phase 1 of shoreline. And I don't have that plat included in your packet. But the preliminary plat that's on the table right now for revision has not been approved. But the previous preliminary plat that was submitted with shoreline, the entire shoreline, not just phases 2 and 3, because now they're revising 2 and 3. That one was approved, yes.
We had 3 3 cul-de-sacs, but the cul-de-sacs were shorter. Right?
It was preliminary. It went through the first
Correct.
before
So did they,
reps could do
Steve,
phase
did they,
one. That whole
this one
preliminary
cul-de-sac
plat had
meet
to go
code
through.
then?
It did. Also, one thing we did that we purposefully lengthened it out to push the entrance to the cul-de-sac further to the south
Before we can.
to
approve
get
a
higher up
final,
on the grade so that
the
it lessens the
entire
grade coming
preliminary
into the
plat
cul-de-sac
has to be
itself.
approved, which
Um,
took in 3 phases.
So that kind of exacerbated that, made the cul-de-sac even longer, but we felt it was better to have a flatter grade coming into it.
I will say, I did get a call from one of the Wattersons and asked about the connectivity. I sent him the information that is pretty similar to what you got in your staff report, showing these 2 illustrations, showing the Gibbons connection and everything, and I did not get a response back. So they just asked me what the plans were. I sent them the information, but they did not make a response back.
What does it do to you if we table this to see if we can get a response from Waterston?
And the letter from the,
Where are we at with the water master?
Okay.
That's the question.
I think you have time I think you have time, honestly.
Well,
The water master plan has been issued to the engineer. They're working on it. It's in their hands at this point.
So what we
moving
wanted
forward.
to do is we wanted to start pushing through this fall and want to be ready by next spring. So I think when we sort of defer and defer and defer, and then we're, just we'd like to get the subdivision. And so that's our.
We want to make the right decision for you and for the city.
But not for the Watersons, right?
Well, we just
The
haven't
Watersons are
heard
gonna
from
die
them.
too.
We're just waiting to hear from them.
You would have one more meeting before the city council meets again. If you meet on the second
So we're
Wednesday of,
We're okay if we put it off for.
Sure. Let me make sure I understand. You're going to get a comment from the Watersons. Jeez, I have to tell you, I am taking control of this subdivision away from the Watersons. So they're very, very difficult for us to work with. And so if you think you can do it, great, appreciate it. But I don't want to give them the idea that they have any control over this subdivision.
Well, it's
That's
the
just
city who's asking, right?
Sure.
well, it might, and I don't know what their intent necessarily was. It may have been that they wanted to make sure there wasn't connectivity. If that was the discussion with these gentlemen when they show it having connectivity and the Watersons didn't approve that, then I don't know what it was, but he just called and asked about it. I sent him the information and I did not hear anything back from them. So.
If I can interject one comment on that. We actually showed them a proposal where the center cul-de-sac would also connect to their property, and they told us they did not want that.
Look, Steve's been going back, I think, Steve, 7 revisions with the Watersons. Unbelievable.
About 3 months.
And just back and forth till we finally just said we have to stop this. This is madness. We've got to move on. So that's kind of
Well, just
my point.
because we have one more meeting before the city council,
I think it's great.
I
Let's do it.
would like us to gather some more information, not to hold you up, really.
Maybe some information from Rob and DPW too.
Right. And the snow
Yeah.
plow. So do we need a motion to table this?
Motion to
Absolutely.
continue.
May we also
We were
request,
missing you, Rowan.
may we also request a memo from Logan City just on their, I know you.
On their
you had,
plans?
Russ, you had conversation with Russ Scarlett, and that's great, but something in a memo and then also addressing anything in their master plan farther east. Just so that we have more information to consider on that topic.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So we have
If those things aren't achieved by the next meeting, are you gonna hold off to the next one?
No, this is just, well, just, it's,
do we want to put it in the
I'm
motion
just
or do we want
curious.
to ask?
One more thing to consider too, you do have one road stub to the north from Little Baldy that is stubbed out as a permanent dead end road right now. That's east east of the road we're discussing.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know.
It's not in a cul-de-sac.
Not a permanent cul-de-sac, no.
Nine
I
feet.
think Ryan asked a great question.
State your name. just so that-
I think Ryan asked a great question. That is, if you don't have these three items that you're hoping to get, are you going to further
Hold your
delay this? And that would be unfortunate from my perspective, but I would like to know what the thought is on that.
I would like to see us just table it, not put a condition on it. Two. Table. Okay, so we have a motion on the table from Rowan Cecil to table this item. I guess you're not voting anymore. You're lame duck today. So I have a motion on the table from Rowan to table this. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Robert Perry. Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Any opposed?
Any opposed?
Nay.
You're opposed?
I'm opposed to table.
Okay. So we have opposition by Brian Marble to not table. Opposition to table. Okay, let's get it right. See if we can confuse our secretaries. So we will deal with it next time, and we're not asking for specific information from someone, so if we don't get it, we hold you up further. Okay. We'll do everything in our power to get the information. What do you need to do? I don't think anything, do you? Does he?
Just if there's something.
Right.
No, we can pull Logan City's general plan, their transportation plan up in that area, and I can get something from Russ, and who do you want? Is it just that you want me to contact the Wattersons and say if they have any comment, or do one of you want to contact them? What?
I'm happy to call.
Okay,
I'll call.
all right. And then I will talk to Rob and Jason on the Public Works memo.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to him. We'll just see what's up with that, and then we'll deal with this in the next meeting, so we're not holding you up needlessly. If you'll just give us that couple of weeks to get that done, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, item number 7. The Bow subdivision preliminary plat. Planning Commission will consider and may take action. Can I have a phone number from you? Paul?
I've got his number.
Phone number? Up there. Great, thank you. You too. So the Bose subdivision, is it Bose or Bowis? Bowis. To work with a guy, and it was Huis on the end, and it was pronounced Bowis. So I have a hard time saying Bowis out of this spelling. Anyway, we'll consider and may take action on a preliminary plat for Bowis subdivision, a 3-lot subdivision, residential subdivision located in the general area of 407 South and 100 West. So Scarlett, if you would like to bring us up to speed on that, and then you would like to. Okay, this subdivision is being built on 2 existing city streets. They will have to make some improvements on 100 West. We're kind of hoping we can coordinate with them on their service lines with our street project that's going in, so we may be getting carts and horses a little bit out of order for this one to make sure that our city road project is the best that we can get. Again, the Utah code allows the city to establish subdivision regulations. And we do have a general plan in place. Part of that general plan, our code also talks about water availability requirements. And then we have the information that it is required to be on a preliminary plat. Out of all of the things on this preliminary plat that are required, the only thing they didn't show were the pipe size and the grades. That's not an uncommon thing to not have shown. In fact, it's quite common. I would probably very seldom do they want to get to the detail at that point in time, but those items will be shown and taken care of with the construction plan. So it's not that they'll be totally ignored, but they are not shown on this particular plat. But everything else that they needed except for the water calculations. And the water calculations, we would ask that be a condition that they submit those water calculations. That's condition number 1. Also, the applicant is concerned about the sidewalk placement. Our city code requires that the sidewalk go on the property line with let me restate that. In our downtown street cross section, out of our standards and specification drawings, C-1A, it shows that sidewalks are placed on the property line. There's a significant reason for that, honestly. Drawing that line in the sand is quite important. The city has learned over many years of experience that people landscape out to the sidewalk. Even though we want people to landscape the park strip between the sidewalk and the road, which they do that too, they know when they do that, that the other side of the sidewalk is the city's property, even though they've got good landscape there. When they landscape our public right of way up to a sidewalk, because we've put the sidewalk inside the right of way line instead of on the property line, they get a real strong feeling that that's their landscaping and not the city's. And so it's just cleaner to have the sidewalk on the property line. There are some concerns, and I think Ms. Ballas is going to talk about that for a minute. They do have some mature trees. I believe there's an irrigation line there as well. So there are some concerns about the sidewalk going right on the property line. That's why that's number 2, is to resolve the sidewalk placement. And if it ends up that we can't work it out with the staff, then they may have to come before this body for an exception to the rule in order to put it into the a little bit further into the right of way. And then, of course, the other condition is the condition that the applicant will meet all of the relevant federal, state, county, Providence City Code rules, laws, codes, ordinances, and approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. And it does show that 400 South is a proposed roadside pathway in our general plan. That's what illustration C is. But I actually believe that that's part of your CMAC, isn't it, Ryan?
I think it probably, I think it might be. I'd have to check that one again. I know there were 3 east-west routes.
And
So I believe it's true.
if it's not, that's a matter of painting a line. It's not creating, it's not putting more asphalt or anything. It's painting a line. And I think that's everything unless you have additional questions. So the dispute is about the sidewalk. The placement of the sidewalk is a concern for them.
Okay.
And I would turn the time over to them to let Mrs. Ballas explain their concerns on that one.
Yeah, let's do that. And then if we've got more questions. for you.
Sure.
Phaedra Booty, Nick Bowers' wife. Could you put that picture back up, Scarlett? Of the Brian, can do that, just might be really helpful.
Which picture would you
Say your name
like?
again. Phaedra Booty, last name is B-U-D-Y. Okay. So I mean, I guess it sounds like whether or not we have to have sidewalks is a moot point, but that's not even up for discussion. It's really strange because there's no sidewalks anywhere in this entire area. And there's also no open lots. And so there's not going to be any sidewalks being paid for by private citizens because there's not going to be any more building in this area. There's only one tiny little sidewalk across the street. And so the sidewalks around our house are just going to go to nowhere. There's not ever going to be joined up with anything.
Can I answer a question to that? I think it sounds like a question. So can I
It does
talk
sound
to
like a
that?
question.
If you look to the north and it appears, I don't know whether is this the canal ditch right here?
That's the place where they've been digging associated with the fiber optics cable.
I don't think so, because this picture is older than that.
There's no sidewalk there. I can guarantee that.
So what you will oftentimes find is when there isn't a sidewalk and there's enough traffic, you will see what we refer to as goat trails. They will indicate that, and that's not because they're goats. It's because you'll see the pattern of traffic on a grass and the grass doesn't grow. And so you look for those. Is 400 South going to have traffic? We intend to have pedestrian traffic move to non-major roads. If we can move pedestrian traffic, once we have First South and Third South completed in construction and we have significant traffic move to those, we would then in the following year or two start our bike trail plans and building those out. As we build that out, it brings more pedestrian traffic on those lower used roads and more on the more vehicle traffic on our larger roads. This is one that would be slated. It would be a good, because that traffic should be reduced. We'd see more pedestrian traffic. So, and if we don't have them build a sidewalk, if they don't build it, then the city builds it someday. And that's why we have an ordinance to require sidewalks. It is within a block of a city park, although the city park is being developed and growing, but we're going to put in some significant money to build that park to be something more. It has sidewalks all the way around it. So this is within a block of a city park. So.
It probably doesn't matter, but the neighbors don't want a sidewalk either, just for the record. They think that it's going to ruin the sort of rural historical feel of that neighborhood. But then I guess the next point is the placement of the sidewalk. And so as Scarlett said, the rules say that it has to be on the property line. But if we had to put it on the property line, we would have to move the entire fence that is right here, which was very recently built. Sorry, here. And then also this park strip is almost 35 feet wide in places, 30 feet at a minimum. So y'all were impressed with the last set of gentlemen who had a park strip of 10 feet. I mean, this is a huge green park strip. And so there's lots of room to work with. In addition to having to move this whole fence, we would have to deal with the irrigation canal, which is right here. Go up just a little bit. There's a really, really big mature tree right here, which would have to come down right here, which would have to come down. One of the biggest trees in the neighborhood. It's beautiful. It would be absolutely a travesty to have to take it down. And so what we're asking is that we could just move the sidewalk 2.5 feet to the right of our property line. You again are working with a 35-foot mean park strip here, and so it just doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal. And then we wouldn't have to move the whole fence, and we wouldn't have to take down that tree. This also would have to be leveled over here, graded if we had to do it around the property.
Can you blow this up just a little bit bigger for me? I'm just trying to.
When you measured that 30 feet, did you measure from the stakes that are currently present on there that the width of the road is going to? Not where the old asphalt was, because there's no asphalt on that road anymore.
Right.
How far do you want me to blow it up? I'm happy to blow it up.
No, that's good. I was just looking to see, because you can see the walking trail, I guess, there on through the grass.
That's the canal.
I think this was the canal.
The canal right there.
I was looking to see if where that,
It's
but
not a goat trail.
And you say there's a fence right there on the property line.
Well, that's right here. It's just right smack dab.
and usually, I mean, if pouring a sidewalk rather than making it right on it, oftentimes we would come in 6 inches because of forms of that sidewalk. So, I mean, when we say property line, we mean the property line, but there is a form and a disturbance that sometimes we have within that 6 inches. But you're wanting 2.5 to move it away from, yeah, a little bit.
Within a very large space, 35 feet.
Are we widening the asphalt, widening that road from what the asphalt was before?
Yes. Yeah, the road,
Substantially?
yeah, I think it's substantial. Yeah, and that's why I asked where you measured from. If you measure from the old asphalt, that's not a, but if you measured from the stakes that are out there now, then that's okay.
It's a huge green space. It's one of the bigger ones. But nobody has landscaped. All these people have a similar amount of space here. Nobody has landscaped up to the edge of it. Doesn't seem to be a theme in this general area. Or is the fact that the irrigation canal is there and people, I think, worry about the irrigation canal.
So does that mean if you're required to bring it in 2.5 feet, will that put it on top of the irrigation canal, and then would you have to pipe it? You're prepared to pipe the irrigation canal?
It's kind of partially piped right now, and so I think that would have to be moved. You kind of have to see it. It's a little.
I actually was out on site today, so I spent half hour on site on your particular property just today. So
the only part of the irrigation canal that we would probably have to move is the little section right here, which is in a pipe. The concern is more the tree and the fence.
I was out there this afternoon too, just before the meeting, and turned on to where the new road was. I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true. I'm just saying I can't remember off the top of my head how close, but they're preparing, how much right of way is there going to be once that road is poured? And then how close the irrigation ditch is. So for a big part of it, the irrigation ditch, do you have room between the fence and and the sidewalk? If you came out your 2.5 feet, or is it going to be on top of that, as like Ryan was saying? Or is there, for the majority of it, is the irrigation ditch would be on the other side of the sidewalk? I'm sorry.
The irrigation ditch is pretty rudimentary in that area. So moving the irrigation ditch is much less of a concern than taking down the tree or moving the fence. It's just with the exception of a couple of culverts, it's just a shallow ditch that's been dug by a backhoe. But my guess is that on this side here, we would have enough room to have a sidewalk and not have to move this irrigation ditch. But on the one up top,
Yeah.
we might have to move that irrigation ditch. And I believe that based on the flagging that is currently there for the road, they have flags up here, and we have flags here marking their property. There will be plenty of room even if we had to move the irrigation ditch, which is again just a rudimentary, small, shallow.
My concern is moving at 2.5 feet. What does that do to the rest of the properties as we consider in the future putting sidewalks?
They all have that same big green space. But for example, if you were to look here, all these houses, property lines are right here, and they all have these really large 30 to 35-foot green space. And nobody's really landscaped on them.
I am property downtown. Can we landscape
Well, Scarlett
according
said that
to the
was,
city?
Scarlett said that was a concern, so.
You are responsible for your park strip, which is the area between the curb and gutter and the sidewalk. And if there's no curb and gutter, it's the area between the sidewalk or the property line and the asphalt. So you can do some landscaping out there. We would prefer it was just grass and not trees and stuff, because people get attached to more formal landscaping. There are some though that have planter boxes and stuff that have encroached out into the right of way considerably.
Yes, to the city, as far as the look and feel there.
Well,
Any landscape.
yeah, unless it encroaches where the city needs to expand. And then we have trouble.
Wasn't Forest South repaved when they did it? They actually specified there would be no curb and gutter put in or anything like that?
Fort South was repaved, was rebuilt, and when they did do that, they did not put curb and gutter in. They put a ribbon along the side.
This is the rest of the people that lived along Forest South, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Now, the rule is with no curb and gutter, but it does say the rule did keep that it required the sidewalk. Okay. Yeah. So she isn't required to do curb and gutter, which, I mean, obviously it's nice, a ribbon that's on 400 South or curb and gutter or a ribbon on the roadway obviously holds the asphalt in better, and we're gonna have a new paved road there, be able to have that tied in. You know, that's always a nice one. Why they wanted sidewalk and no curb and gutter, I think that would be a discussion someday. Wouldn't mind having you describe to me, probably not tonight.
Is there a fence ordinance? There is, isn't there?
Yes, there is a fence ordinance.
And it has to do with corners, or does it have to do with where the fence is placed on the property?
A little bit of both, but we do have a clear view ordinance that has to do with the height of the fence and the visibility through the fence when it impacts a intersection or a driveway with a city street. So we do have that, but I don't think their fence violates any of that, where their fence is.
It's about, there's no which corner you mean. No,
Fourth South and First West.
right here. There's no fence. That's what the,
Yeah.
and this fence is about 5.5 feet tall probably, and it's, you can see, it's like 6 fence.
So it's 5.5 feet tall, and it's on the back third.
Yeah. And then it also, there's also fence over here. So there's nothing, no fence at all.
And the fence is on the property line.
It is. That's what the survey tells them.
And so we typically moved in, the normal for the city is to be a few inches in. Brian said, if I heard right, 6 inches or something for
For forms,
or
it
whatever.
can be. I mean, we would prefer to have it on the property line, but when we talk about that, the forms may be, it's a common thing so that we're not disturbing their property. So we keep that.
It's already developed. When they're doing new stuff, it's right there at the edge of the front lot line. You can do the corners up there right there. So the other thing is, when you were out there, Ryan, we're on the 400 south, the tree that's sitting there, besides the tree, the sidewalk could be right by the property line, your opinion?
I think the tree is clearly probably your biggest concern on that side, I assume, right?
Well,
It's
it also
just-
has to be grieved, and there's a wall that would have to come down, like a brick cement wall.
There is, but it's fairly small and I think the tree's gotta be your bigger issue. So, I mean, that's,
Is the tree right where the sidewalk would have to go?
Uh-huh.
Or is it just?
it's right where the
Parking.
sidewalk would have to go. It's,
Right,
the tree
not
is on the
part of
city's
it.
property. Tree is clearly on the city's property.
Just have the sidewalk go along the property line until it gets up to the tree and then just go around the tree.
Why would you need a sidewalk?
Well, I've seen that done in other places.
I think I've seen people pave around dead animals too.
That's only because I didn't want to run over it.
Okay. Right.
So your idea is to take the tree out.
I didn't propose
Well, I didn't say
anything
that.
that drags out.
Let's get Joe back here.
Wait a minute. I don't want to be that. Don't drag me into that.
You know, one of the reasons why we all love Providence, is big streets, the trees, the grassy rural areas that are mixed in. We're not talking about some big, 40 house subdivision here. So that's just sort of my appeal. To take that tree down, I think it would be really, really sad. And I think the neighbors would be really, really sad too.
It's a pine tree.
It's probably 60 feet tall.
And it didn't fall down in the wind last year.
It's not a spruce. I don't know what it is.
We lost a lot of cedars. Pine.
Okay. Anybody else have questions, Kelly?
Another question to Scarlett. When we paved for south, they put sidewalks in, did they?
No, that funding was not for sidewalks. That funding was for the road only.
Right. So voice thing said right now, it's have a new road on 4 South. With no sidewalks or curb and gutter or anything like that. I wonder if we couldn't continue that way as we head this road and go just to the north side of the property and just let it be.
One of the things that we look at when we're looking at development, we look at our standards and specifications manual, and we look at our drawings. And we had someone come in and ask us to reconsider curb and gutter throughout the city. And so we did a new downtown street cross section. I want to say it was shortly after Ryan came on board with us, wasn't it? Weren't you here when we did this one? I don't remember.
Right before, yeah, right at the same time. The downtown cross section.
Yeah. So Ryan's going to pull up what we look at, and this stuff is already been decided. Staff doesn't make new things. We look at, and if we have options, we utilize options to the best of the work for both the city and the development. But as you can see, 400 south from 200 west to 100 east does not require curb and gutter. But when you go along the road or along the line, it does require a 5-foot sidewalk. And that's where staff is coming from. So.
The picture beyond the GIS picture, and go up to the corner of 4th South and Main Street. Because the city did put some sidewalk in there when they were doing that park. I'd like to see there, that corner there. So that sidewalk is right on the property line, well, one side. On the other side, there's the property line is on the street. That's kind of an anomaly. It's not. Is that correct? Property line goes all the way to the asphalt?
You know, as you go into these maps, there's a disclaimer that these are for illustrative purposes only. So I can't tell you for sure if that property line, if the sidewalk's on the property line or if it is not. But I will tell you this, the sidewalk, or the street profile has changed over the years. There's been times when it was not uncommon for sidewalks to be 1 foot off a property line. There's been times when they've said sidewalk on one side and no sidewalk on the other side. There's been a lot of different variations. So as you're looking at things, it could be that when that was built, that's the way the city had it planned. And now, as Ryan showed you our chart, that's what we look at now, is what the city has in mind now. So we try and make the old match with the new, but sometimes it just doesn't quite work that way.
I think you told me that years ago. Told me that before. I appreciate that. I think if you go north just 1 or 2 more lots, you'll see that the sidewalk goes right to the edge of the asphalt. And it was a poor decision on whoever's part, whether it's planning and zoning or the homeowner's part. Baker's property.
Tell me the address. What was it again?
Just 1 or 2 lots
South
north
of
of where you're at. Right, you could just stay zoomed in. Yeah, go ahead and zoom back in again. Looks like it's under the trees. See, the sidewalk is actually there next to, right next to the asphalt. My wife and I walk up and down that street
Right
very
here.
often. I don't like that part of the street. You get the traffic there right next to you, and there's no really reason for it in my mind. Like the sidewalk should have been put in the right place there, but.
Well, it
anyway,
looks to me like those pine trees have been there for a very long time, probably longer than the sidewalk.
Yeah,
So I'll bet they convinced someone to let them put it out on the road so that they didn't have to cut those trees down.
well,
Those
the
are
trees aren't
great
in the
big
way,
trees.
actually. It's the boughs are in the way, and somebody really needs to go in and cut them up because the sidewalk's really not usable. Anyway, I'm just pointing out areas that are got a sidewalk issue on them, similar to what we're talking about. The other one is there is a sidewalk on 3rd East, and we don't have to look at it, but it does go right into a power pole. I mean, it just dead ends right there. So a small subdivision, X subdivision, where
Is it in front of
it's in,
Connor's house?
yes, it is. It's in front of Jordan Hanson's place. So the sidewalk was required when they built the subdivision. They put it in, and it ended at the property line, and oh, right there. So they built it. That's the way they built it. And it's not used. The sidewalk's not used, which is too bad. I'm all for keeping with the statutes. I don't see the reason to save trees. I don't save trees because my trees have worn out, fallen down. They've gotten dangerous. I've taken them down. I wish the city owned them so the city could take them down, but I was told no. And so we've taken them down, and I got bruises and scars to prove it. And we put up new ones, and they're coming along nicely. I'm very happy with it. But trees take maintenance, a lot of it.
Especially pine trees. In fact, I've got one that tall on my farm. And every time we have a windstorm, I sweat bullets that it's out in the street. Because it's old and it's tall, and one of these days it's gonna fall over. So I agree. I think that trees come and go. And
There's a lot of room there for trees, a whole fresh new set of trees. Hopefully there's no power lines in the way, but some nice big maples that traditionally were one of the main trees downtown.
but you don't want maples next to a sidewalk, because that's gonna push your sidewalk up.
Just choose a different species. Columnars, they can go down to 3 feet or something.
Ones that are not.
We have a specific list of approved trees that could be used.
And I know they put them underneath the power line on Main Street, and they look like dog food. I mean, it just is awful.
Don't
said-
hold back, Brian, let us know just exactly how you
You
feel.
know I've never pulled punches. But one side of Main Street, a good chunk of it has got these stupid little trees on it, and the other side's got the traditional maple trees on it. And
But they do push the sidewalks up. I mean, that's why we're going around having to fix the sidewalks. We've got those people.
yeah, it's true. So find a tree, big
Okay,
one. Big trees.
okay. More discussion? Just because you're not voting doesn't mean you can't discuss.
I'm just thinking about when you were talking about the meeting going fast.
I shouldn't have said anything, right? Okay,
I was looking at the engineer report and just wanted to see if there were, the engineering report had some questions about the existing buildings. Are they scheduled to be demolished? Is this subdivided or what's the plan there?
Run down the pine shed.
And a beautiful barn.
So that's up to them.
Okay.
Did that meet the setbacks? That was the question the engineer had. Had the setback from the property line.
The barn does meet the setbacks. It doesn't look like it on the drawing because it's showing the eaves on the drawing, but the eaves are allowed to project some in the side yard setback. So we were assured by, and the applicants were assured by their design engineer that the barn and the eaves do meet the allowed or the required setback. We can check that out, but they assured us that the engineer assured us that they did. Not our engineer, their engineer.
Maybe one of the property lines they have drawn has a little kink in it to go misses the barn.
There's a king.
Oh,
I don't see it.
here, see?
Oh, the property line, I'm thinking the one out on the street.
Bring it up. so it- Yeah, it's up to here.
okay. And the impact on the ditch. If we put the sidewalk where code says to put it, what does that do to you with the water ditch?
Part of it is in a pipe.
Come up.
Part of it is right now in a pipe, and that's gonna have to be moved. It's a pretty small stretch of it. I'm guessing off the top of my head, there's a few other places where the just ditch that is not in a pipe will have to be moved as well. Under almost any scenario where the sidewalk is.
Okay.
And did we see an issue, Scarlett, did you bring up something about water requirements? There's some specs missing, or there were some specs that were low, or what do we got there?
Calculations.
The calculations that are required for the water dedication were not included in this.
Well, water shares from the irrigation company?
It may be, yes, that's generally what people do is they look at what water shares they have, and if they have adequate amount, they dedicate whatever shares are required for this. We look at acre feet instead of water shares. So, but they can utilize water shares towards the dedication, even though we look at acre feet.
Okay, so they're going to be calculated.
Right, but that can be a condition because it has to be done with the final plat approval. So it can be a condition that this is approved with the condition that they get us those calculations.
If they include it,
Mhm.
but that was really the only issue.
That and the sidewalk
The
placement.
sidewalks. Okay, that's why we're waiting for a motion.
I propose that
I move.
I move. We recommend to the city council.
No, this one's you.
I move that we approve this subdivision based on the findings of fact and with and existing conditions and the proposed conditions. And not limited to sidewalk on the property line or very close to it. And water conditions being provided, the appropriate amount of water conditions being provided. The final plat comes in. Is that okay?
It was a little confusing to me.
Amen.
Just two little corrections, Brian. So you would be approving the preliminary plat,
Okay.
and then it would be the water calculations, not conditions, calculations.
And are we-
Do you want to restate?
Yeah, I'm going to start over again.
Okay.
I'm going to go a little slower for myself, not for you. I move that we accept the plat, preliminary plat, given the conclusions of law, and given the conditions which will require that the sidewalk be in place, or that the sidewalk be part of the development, and that the outdoor water calculations will be made and provided. Just less confusing. Are we there?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Brian Marvel, second by Roland Cecil. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And so we'll go to item number 8. And I had an email from Andy Bentley, which is probably one that you had, and it said that he needs to be in lava. And he wanted to come in versus Skype, not Skype, Zoom. Do you have him on Zoom?
I believe I do.
Okay. All right, so welcome, Andy.
Hold on just a second. It's being slow. Can you hear us, Andy?
Yes,
how are you?
Okay. So we'll have Scarlett give us an update on this. It would include any issues that we're looking at. And then Andy, you can give us your information, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to go? Or
Nope.
Scarlett?
Scarlett's going to do hers.
All right. Okay, that's what I thought. Perfect.
This is an 8-lot subdivision in the general area of 1070 South, 400 East. It has 2 existing city streets. These streets are not full streets at this point, so this development will complete their portion. They show that they're completing 470 East to a 66-foot right-of-way, and they are completing the west side of 470 East, and then they're completing the east side of 400 East. They actually are going to deal with a little bit different asphalt widths. 470 East is a 30-foot asphalt pad. 400 East is a 37-foot asphalt pad. So they do show those improvements in their plan. Again, this is a preliminary plat. So we're talking about the same type of information that we talked about with the other one, the previous. This one, they did include those water calculations. They do have all of the requirements, the statutory requirements to meet the preliminary plat. There, so the conclusions are that the general plan, the proposed preliminary plat is consistent with the general plan and the development in the area. It talks about the parks, trails, and recreation. Just a general statement, this area is in an area that we are a little bit park deficient, but Ryan is diligently working to resolve that matter. The transportation plan, as I just mentioned, 470 East is a local road without limited access, and 400 East is a minor collector without limited access. The limited access means that we could limit the number of driveways, but in both of these cases, that is not the case. These are roads that allow driveways on them. You can see the difference between the local, which is 470, would be the 30-foot asphalt, and the 400 East would be the minor collector, which is 37. So this condition is that they just need to continue to meet all of our rules and regulations, and a reminder that the application or paperwork, approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City's approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. In both the engineering review and the fire review, Aaron, like everyone, is entitled to a break now and again, and he took one, and so his review didn't come in quite as quickly as he usually gets them, but they call out that a fire hydrant, an additional fire hydrant may be needed. And so I know, well, maybe I thought that Max's did, but it didn't. And Aaron's does talk about that an additional fire hydrant may be needed based on the length between the existing fire hydrants and this development. So, but that will be taken care of with construction drawings.
So this is one that we would be not passing it to the council.
No, you're not passing this to the
This
council.
is our decision.
Let me, I think I pulled up the wrong engineering comments. Hang on. Yes, I know. Okay, so he talks about the water and sewer services. And again, those things can be taken care of as part of construction. Add a fire hydrant on 400 East between lots 4 and 5. And then Aaron also mentioned the fire hydrant. So, but the engineer confirmed that there will need to be a fire hydrant, it looks like. So, all right. Okay,
We don't have a letter from Aaron in our packet.
no,
But it's handled.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Andy, you're on if you would like to say anything.
Just that I spoke with the engineers today. They did receive the requested changes. He was going to try to actually get it sent out today, just so you actually had the updated changes as of today. I'm guessing that did not happen, but I should have a final plat for this by Monday with those changes. So if you approve this tonight, I guess, of course. That's pretty much all I have.
Well, what are we going to do if Andy Bentley's not coming to see us in our meeting?
You don't miss me.
I thought it looked pretty good, pretty straightforward. Glad to see him making progress on it.
And you're making friends with all the neighbors, right?
Yes, I have to. I'm going to be living there, so
That's pretty important.
yeah. No, they're all good. So
And I'm ready for a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for the Bentley Estates, an 8-lot residential subdivision located in the general area of 1040 South, 400 East, subject to the findings of fact, the conclusions of law, and the conditions as stated in the staff report, and with the addition of the fire hydrant, the 2 items identified by the city engineer. Fire.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Michael Fortune. And a second by Brian Marble. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Andy? I guess we've pushed the go button,
Yes.
right?
Perfect. That's awesome. I will see you guys on the 13th of Mile Flat.
Okay,
So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
thank you. Now we can move to item number 9, Fox Hollow preliminary plat. Planning Commission will consider and may take action on a preliminary plan for the Fox Hollow Townhomes, a 60-unit townhome development located in the general area of 590 West, 300 South. So we'll have Scarlett bring us up to speed, and then Todd or whoever's going to speak can come.
Okay, this preliminary plat's just a little bit different. It has a little bit more to it than the other 2 because it is a multifamily, single-family attached development. So we add those rules into the mix. The preliminary plat, the additional rules that we add into the mix come from Providence City Code 1089, which lists the design standards for attached and multifamily residential development. Is the intent of these design standards to ensure that single-family attached and multifamily development is developed in a manner that provides attractively designed, constructed, and landscaped housing. Bear in mind, these guys are going forward prior to the changes that we talked about tonight earlier in that code. They're coming in under the current code, and so that's what we are reviewing too. And even though that new code will pass probably before their development finishes, they are still coming in under the existing code. They need to have the things that are missing from their particular plat. Their plat, I could not see on there, and I looked and looked, but I could not see where they're showing the existing irrigation ditches or pipes. They also need a surveyor stamp and a signature. And a lot of surveyors, I won't say a lot, there are some surveyors that are very leery about signing a preliminary plat because it is a preliminary plat. But we really do want to make sure that the preliminary plat is really important to us too. And so we want to make sure that he or she feels good enough that they will sign that preliminary plat. So that those things are missing. And then the title report has not come in that I could find. So the conclusions are that, and remember, this is preliminary plat, so you do not have final landscaping, you don't have final architectural, but you're getting closer. So the conclusions, the general plan, vision, and key initiatives. That number 6 encourages housing options to meet the need of residents of all ages, income level, and family size, regardless of their stage of life. The framework map indicates that this area is in a 10-minute mixed-use node and adjacent to neighborhood and residential development, so it fits in well with that. the Providence City Code Design 1089. It appears to be consistent with the requirements of 1089 with the conditions that we're going to talk about in a minute. And then the preliminary plat 1132, it is consistent with that code with the following conditions. And I did put something a little bit different on this one. And part of that is because with the multifamily design and the mixed use, the Planning Commission gets involved at an earlier stage. And so I put this review as not all inclusive. The Planning Commission and other staff members may have other comments. The site plan, architectural plans, and landscaping plans are preliminary. Changes and or additional information may be required to meet the final plan requirements, and the infrastructure shown is preliminary. Actual locations, sizes, grades, etc., will be addressed as part of the construction drawings review. That was one that actually Rob asked me to put in because he felt like sometimes we try and get them to show things on the preliminary plat that are probably better taken care of at the construction plan stage, but we want to make sure that people understand that they will, even if they're shown on the preliminary plat, the actual locations or sizes and grades may change. So then the conditions are to address the comments in red in the findings of fact, which we talked about as far as the signature, title report, and the water calculations. The applicant will continue to meet all relevant federal, state, county, Providence City rules, laws, codes, ordinances. Approval by the city of any application or paperwork submitted does not alleviate the owners and or their agents from their responsibility to understand and conform to local, state, and federal laws. Providence City approval is not intended to and cannot be construed to allow any laws to be violated. And then also as part of this report, you see their final plats, or excuse me, their preliminary plats. You can see their phasing plan. You can see where they've delineated their sensitive areas, or not delineated, illustrated their sensitive areas. They also show their fire plan for the path of the fire truck, the emergency vehicle plan, and then they show their architectural designs. It looks like this one's going to be blue and white with gray stone on it, I believe. Brick. And, oh, it is stone? Okay, I was right the first time then. You can see that they're having the garages, and they also show the interior plans, and so they've met all of the preliminary requirements except for the conditions. And as you stated, Kathleen, the applicants are present and available, and they did send an updated landscaping plan that came right before, and I have to admit, all I did was forward that on quick, so I didn't review their updated landscaping plan. But the preliminary one is in the packet for you as well. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. So who's going to speak?
I'll keep speaking.
Okay.
Dan Tustin, Ironwood Construction.
Spell the last name for our.
Tustian. A couple of those items that are on the list tonight are, I think, just some clerical errors. Maybe a signature was forgotten. It's been surveyed. We have a survey on it. The title report, I thought we got to you, Scarlett. Maybe we got misplaced. We need to do that to you. That's done and ready. The water calculations is something we're still working on. So, what questions do you have for me?
I've got one. Last time we talked with you about changing could we have those roads matched up? Did we do anything about that?
Well, we've done some digging on it, and we've consulted with our owners, and we've been discussing it. And so I know that's an issue, and our owners would prefer to keep it the way it is. Number one, because we would lose 4 to 5 units to change it. I've talked with Aaron earlier today, and the way we have it designed actually meets the fire code. He does give a recommendation in his report, if you have that
he would like a road, even if it's chained or gated. But being that these are two different private communities, we meet his code the way it is. And so rather than lose the profitability of 4 to 5 lots, he would say that if we move that road, he confirmed with me that I would need to add another hammerhead at the street. That's where we lose him.
Because the distance.
Because of the distance. And the distance, last time we talked, we thought maybe it was 200. It's actually 150 feet from that point. So for those reasons, we'd like to keep it the same way as private communities.
That's all I've done.
I just have one problem. The townhome's gonna be looking right into my bedroom window.
We'll put some blinds up for you.
I'm just south, we have bought a lot.
Oh, okay. We haven't considered fences yet, but I don't know. I don't know much about Champlin's development. Maybe they'll put one up.
Brian can help you with some trees there.
Yeah.
Any trees. I do, I grow them for the neighbors and stuff.
I was going to point out too that the exteriors of these buildings are very similar to the same ones we built at the corner or right across the street from Providence Gateway. The exterior finishes, they've chosen the same color palette. They seem to be attractive and pop, and they were catering to the younger crowd that likes that kind of attention.
So are the materials above average?
Yeah, the materials are above average. I mean, everything is cement board siding. The stone, we're well over 30% on the stone, and all the way around it's cement board.
They look really nice.
Yeah, same kind of exterior on these.
That's great. Landscaping plan looks really nice too. That little park in phase 1 play area will be really nice when those trees come.
I think so. And originally we thought that would be a retention pond, but because of the grade and the topography of the ground, we have that other underground retention. So that just becomes a play area. It's just a big grass play area.
Play area.
Yeah,
Well, you know my thoughts about the building.
I know your thoughts about the buildings.
And I'm purposely not saying anything to say.
How come? How come?
Okay.
How come you're not saying anything about the buildings? Because you don't want to go on
I was
record?
waiting. I'm going to say something.
Oh, okay. Mark had said.
But I just wanted to hear, it's interesting to hear a younger point of view. I just don't like those slanted roofs.
I heard that comment too. From people in the neighborhood, just a couple. Just a couple, but.
Did you give any thoughts to that after we talked about it?
I have, I've given quite a bit of thought to it since we
And
talked.
I need to disclose that Dan and Todd and I had a meeting. I had a different hat on when we were talking. We were talking about the Blacksmith Port water. And actually they're willing to do some things because Little Ballard does flow right through the middle of there. And perhaps we can use some irrigation water to flow through that to make it more of a feature rather than a sludge plot. Right now. Of course, you know, we've got a dry year, so that's an issue, but it's always been pretty slow flowing. And it flows down under the highway and through Ficus's property and then over by the property that I own. And it's very, very slow, and it ends up down in the middle of Black Hawk where they have those ponds, and then it flows from there out to the river. So if we could put some extra water in there, it will push all of that. Hopefully, I mean, that would be the hope for.
Yeah.
It will push the water through and make it less of a mosquito incubation area and make it a nicer area. But we did have a conversation, and I did ask them to look at the design and see if there was something else that they would. I like the colors. Chicken coop roof.
The grade is enough, the grade is enough to make the water flow? If you add water.
It flows now, but not fast enough because there's not enough supply of water.
Wanders slowly.
It does wander
It
very,
wanders
very
slowly.
slowly, very slowly. And it really is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. So if we can flush that out and keep it looking nice, then it becomes more of a feature. So we have to check with the state water people and make sure that we can do that.
We're concerned about flooding people downriver.
Well,
Yeah.
I think you're still waiting on Army Corps of Engineers. to
We
tell you.
are, we have our delineation now that's going to.
They gave you one or you
No,
created
they-
one?
We've created a delineation that's now being.
Reviewed.
What kind of engineer did you bring in for the delineation? I'm curious.
We brought in Civil Solutions, so just our civil engineer.
That doesn't mean that the Army Corps accepts it.
No,
No, but I know
Been
there
there,
are
done that
engineers
with
out
them.
there that specialize in Army Corps.
this one,
issues.
from their report has very little wetlands on it. And so a stream alteration permit and very little wetlands disturbed. It looks pretty simple.
Didn't hear an answer on the roof talks.
You want me to answer? I do have a comment if you'd like to hear. So the owners.
Let's start hold back here. Please,
So
let's talk.
the last project that we did, the one I referred to over at the corner, that's the Steve Meissner's project as well. That one, he went with more of a traditional roof style. His customer base, and as he was gaining sales for that, he did sell it, but they were looking, the younger group that is looking for townhomes right now in the demographic that we're catering to is looking for a more modern style. And that's where they would like us to keep this single slope roof. And if you look around at a lot of the communities, not just in Providence, but everywhere, a lot of them are hitting these single slope roofs. You've got Prov Gateway is one of them. You got Vineyard, you got the one just to the north right here. It's the same thing. And it seems to be that demographic, that younger crowd that likes that little bit more modern flair. And those of us that are a little aged, like myself, I prefer the more traditional roof. And so it's just a matter of opinion.
I think.
But you don't want to be like everybody else, do you?
No, we didn't on the last one because we were right next to Prov Gateway. We wanted a little bit different product line. Here, we're kind of setting the trend. So maybe the next guy doesn't want to be like us.
I think it looks attractive, but it's a matter of taste. And
It's okay. I'm asking for your opinion.
no,
There's no right or wrong answer.
I think that the design looks very attractive. And if I were in the market for a town, I like it better than a townhome I previously lived in where everything was this is a fun new twist.
I know that some older people do not like it at all. I'm not.
I'm in that older group.
You know, I'm halfway in the middle. I like both, but I mean, I understand the matter.
We had a class at me on Wednesday. I commented to one of the ladies that we're going to see a lot of this, and she says, "No, let's get rid of it. Let's get back to the old way."
And you know, as trends go, we may full circle and come back that way. For right now, the
But then you'll
customer,
be out of style.
well, for right now, my customer needs to sell the units to the crowd that's buying that style.
Hey. Any other comments? Okay. We then need a motion.
I move to approve the preliminary plan for the Foxhole
Preliminary
townhome.
plan.
I think I wrote plans.
Plan.
Is it a plan?
And-
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm reading it right here.
Okay, my mistake.
You're allowed that. One at a
Just
time.
one? Oh, good. Okay. Go for it.
I move that we approve the preliminary plan for the Fox Hollow Townhomes, 60-unit townhome development located in the general area of 590 west, 300 south. With the, with the findings of fact is listed in the report that we have. And conclusions of the law, they're stated.
Over there, three of them.
Condition.
Conditions.
We're on- what are the conditions?
Last one.
Page 4,
Conclusions of law.
findings of facts. Conditions.
And the conditions as stated in our report we have there.
Is that enough, Scarlett? We don't have to name the other stuff. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Rowan Cecil, a second by Michael Fortune. Any? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The motion carries. From the water standpoint, I'll be back. I had a conversation with.
They haven't contacted me either, so.
It's not here. I think if the other ones aren't here, then we let them, we continue it. We don't.
Yeah.
If the applicant doesn't come,
Okay, so are we talking about Spring Creek?
We are talking about, Spring Creek. I was just checking to see if, because these developers are from out of town. I could have sworn he said he wanted to make the drive up, but I didn't hear from anybody, and Ryan doesn't have any Zoom requests, and I just checked my emails. So
Should we put it off until the next one?
probably be a good thing to do to put it off until the next one.
Does that put him under the new statute?
No, because it goes off of when they give us a complete application. So these guys are under the existing. Any application that's received before the city council actually approves that, actually adopts that ordinance on, that changes the wording in that code, goes under the current one. So
So you have a question? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand.
I move that we table item number 10 until we get a
Motion by Brian Marble,
party.
second by Rowan Cecil, all in favor.
Aye.
Motion carries.
11, same thing.
So you don't have to jump for neither of you.
Yeah, I think 11's the same thing.
Do you want to introduce that one or not? But we don't have anybody.
Okay. Item number 11 is a rezone application of Ballard Springs. And the commission, the planning commission will review a request to change the zone for parcels 02-090-0013 and 03-002-007 from commercial highway district to mixed use located in the general area of 300 south and 500 south. And State Road 165. So
Now, this one, you couldn't make a decision on or a recommendation at this point anyway. This is just on there for you to be able to gather information from the developer prior to the public hearing. So since they're requesting a rezone, you need to hold a public hearing. I'm sorry, what? Oh. Okay, since the developers aren't able to attend, doesn't necessarily mean you have to hold up not having the public hearing next time, but the ability to ask them some questions right now. You would
They
have
are
to
not
have
in a
them.
hurry to develop.
Okay,
And so I think we're probably okay.
all right.
They may not have realized that we were doing it or.
They may have just been waiting for the public hearing notice, which won't go out until, because they didn't get it in time. They didn't turn it in time for us to have time to do a public hearing notice on it. And so,
Is it appropriate for me to say something about this or not?
well, it's on the agenda. You certainly can.
Okay.
You did get the information that we had from them because it did come in, and I talked to Kathleen, and we felt like we wanted to give them the opportunity to come in and kind of talk to you before it went to public hearing. We put it on the agenda. I did get my staff report finished today. It's kind of lengthy, and so but part of the reason why it's lengthy is because I took this current, I took the city code for mixed use, and the use two sections, the two charts, the use chart and the area regulations. And they are in there showing you, and all I did was take the mixed use and the commercial highway district so that you can see what uses if you change to mixed use, you can see what uses you're giving up on the commercial highway side of things. Or if you keep it commercial highway, you can see what uses could have been if you'd go the mixed use route. And so that's what's in there. There's also the sensitive areas. Keep in mind that the sensitive areas, just because those illustrations on the GIS parcel summary show that there are areas that require further study, doesn't necessarily mean that they meet our definition of a sensitive area. However, a couple of things that do are the open water and the wetlands. I don't know if they've had their wetlands delineated or not, but the wetlands that are depicted at this point, that's what we would go from. And those two items definitely are considered non-developable. Other than that, the other items would be potentially developable. And out of those, I think there's only 3 that actually meet that standard. The others, even though there's steep slopes and what we call and steep slopes over 30% and steep slopes between 20 and 30, they don't meet the 50-foot rule that we have. But all that information is in the packet for you that it got emailed out this afternoon.
Okay. I also want to remind you, as you look at that packet, remember what we just required across the street.
To the west.
To the
Ficus?
west.
The ficus? Is it the ficus across the
No
street?
ficus, but the Blackstone and Hans Peterson. So,
Okay.
like I said, I just want you to remember what we required of them across the street versus what's being asked here. So as you study your packet and your information, keep that in mind.
The packet that was just sent out this afternoon.
Well, yes. And then what we did last, with that stuff that's across the street to the west, across the street, across the highway. And my desire as a planning commission is
Talking about consistency,
Yeah.
I would say that at this point, if you want to establish a precedence for the applicant to be present, you have now become inconsistent in your last 2 agenda items. I would just ask
I
what
don't know that
precedent you
we
want,
would-
but anyway, it's
that
fine.
we require it. It's just that
I think it's a very good precedent, and if they're not here, to be able to table it for them to be present is a good precedent to have.
if it were
So-
mine, I would want to be present.
Absolutely.
So-
And I think that to be fair to them, it should be when you do that. So anyway, as far as consistency, I just recommend that.
Everybody was,
people were here for all of these. Is that what you're saying?
Just item 10 and 11. Now you've gone to 11 and visiting on 11, but you skipped 10 because they weren't here. As long as you're defining your precedent, I
I
just,
think we need to consider on this one, we need some input. I don't see a reason to change it. Commercial highway district, commercial highway district, it's on the highway. Why would we want to change it? But they got to have a reason for it. And I think they should leave it
Right.
as a study item, sure. And then they don't have to go through all the preliminary. You can have an open discussion.
Okay, so on a study item, we don't need to have any kind of action.
We'll just put it on as a study item next time and you can chat with them and go from there.
Well, and for consistency too, in the past, if people are not here, we don't deal with them. Just because,
Well,
in fairness to them,
but we have study items about statutes that we don't need anybody here, that we just discuss amongst ourselves. And we let Ryan talk once in a while.
I appreciate. And those are items that honestly, staff is representing the app as an applicant on some of those. So, but anyway, I just trying to help.
okay. Just a point of information. When the elections happen in November, we need to think about the planning commission because I would step off of the planning commission. And so we need another member. And also, we'll need to elect a chairman. And it's not if you're vice chair, you step right into it.
It's a vote amongst the
It's a vote.
quorum.
Right.
I'm not missing that meeting. I'll tell you that right.
So you just need to be thinking about it. I just wanted people to be aware that is coming.
I didn't think about it till now.
I stepped down before
But you're still here
to help vote on a person.
Yes.
But if we get a new person, if I step down, then that person. No, they wouldn't be a voting member. But
Right. See what I mean? I
you want me to step down now?
No, I pulled the same thing.
Did you? Okay.
So-
Anyway, it's
So are you,
something to think about.
are you thinking about that you want to get somebody in mind to?
Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
This is a CIA thing where you Okay.
I don't want to sway people. I mean, as a commission, you should,
Good.
if there's somebody who wants to step up. I mean, when I got made chair, I said, I'll do it. So if somebody wants to step up, the
Anybody
rest of
saying
you
step
might
up?
say bonus. Okay, I'm just giving you a heads up that that's coming.
Very good. We got anybody who wants to step up? Or does anybody want to say they want to step up?
Don't be afraid to say.
Don't be afraid to.
I vote that we close this meeting.
Don't be
Okay,
afraid to skip the meeting.
Roland's got the right. Okay, we've got a motion to
Make the
close the
Roland
meeting,
motion.
yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
Anybody
Michael
else have it?
Fortune